Success. Media. Network. 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 Network.
This is your show.
Good day, successors. I am Antonio Holman, and welcome to the 4 Principles of Success, number 27, where I chat with successful people and entrepreneurs about how they enhance their businesses and lives in the areas of knowledge, health, wealth, and spirituality. Today, we're talking to Damion Lupo. Damion is located in Austin, Texas, is a 5-time author, highly sought-after financial consultant, and with a focus on self-responsibility over the last quarter century, has started and owned more than 30 different companies, including an insurance agency, a precious metals firm, a venture capital company, a financial consulting firm, and more than a dozen real estate investment and development companies. Other than his aforementioned business successes, Damion is also the founder of Yokido, his own martial art, as well as holds 3 other black belts. Damion, are you ready to help our listeners prepare for success?
Antonio, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. All right, Damion, you got a heck of a resume there, but you haven't told us anything about your personal life. How about that?
You know what it sounds like? It sounds like an exhausting piece of paper to look at, just all this stuff. I'm thinking about, golly, does that guy ever sleep?
Who needs to sleep?
Yeah, that was definitely something that I missed. A funny personal story back in my early days of real estate investing. I was going hardcore as an entrepreneur, as somebody that was focused on success and making my mark and proving to everybody that even though I dropped out of college and I was kind of a little nuts in high school, I was gonna show everybody. I just worked all the time, and I remember falling asleep at my office because I was working day and night and doing some accounting catch up. I hadn't done accounting for 2 years. And so I'm over there working. I fall asleep under my desk, and my office manager came in and she starts screaming because she saw me literally under my desk laying on the floor at 8 a.m. and she thought I was dead. And I woke up and went, "What's wrong?" She goes, "I thought you were dead." And I said, No, I'm just working. I'm focused. And she went, "Oh my God. Okay. Wow." So maybe that's a little extreme, but sometimes that's what happens when you're really all in. You get out of balance, and it can happen like that.
Oh man, that's a crazy story. That reminds me of a Seinfeld episode.
Felt like it was.
Wow. So what do you do to relax and have fun that's not business related?
I definitely spend a lot of time doing yoga, and there's all these different pieces of that are valuable, whether it's the physical, opening my body up. So you sit in front of a computer or you're doing things or you're sitting all the time. You really need to find something that moves you around. And so yoga is a big part of that. It's also a place where I can find the peace and the presence between the yoga and the martial arts that I do with Yokido. That is a place where I'm integrating my mind and my body and my spiritual life all together in an hour and a half. So I make sure that that's part of my rhythm. And it's one of the key things that I do. I time block. I mean, if things aren't on my calendar, if they're not blocked out in time, they don't live in my world. And so I make sure that gets time blocked every week so that it doesn't get missed. It's probably the most powerful thing that I do to make sure I stay in some type of balance and I'm not totally all over the place.
Time blocks that's something I have not implemented yet, but I keep hearing more and more about it. What size are the blocks you typically stay at?
So one of the things I use hours, but I also use 15 minutes. And one of the reasons when I'm thinking about a typical meeting with somebody, what I've seen too often, and I used to be a party to this, things were scheduled in hour blocks for things that didn't need to take more than 5 or 10 or 15 minutes. So I'm narrowing things down, and what happens is you end up getting to the point. You focus on the solution. You don't just wander around. It's like being in front of your computer. And I wrote a book. I wrote Reinvented Life this way, where I was writing the book with somebody, and we narrowed things down to where we said, okay, we're going to write this chapter over the next hour, and then we're going to meet back up on Skype in 1 hour. And there was no place for us to go. It narrowed the window down because there's a universal law that we will expand the time. We'll expand the work into the time we allow. If we give ourselves a week, we'll take the whole week. If we give ourselves an hour, we'll find the solution. We'll get the thing done in the next hour. So you want to compress it down. If it's 5 minutes, compress it down to that block. And yoga isn't going to be a 5-minute block, but a lot of meetings are, and we waste a lot of time because we give things too much space. So it's all about putting it on the calendar and then holding yourself accountable to the calendar. And this is Gary Keller's stuff from The One Thing, which is one of the best books ever if you haven't read it.
Okay, that reminds me of the thought of crunch time, where a lot of things happen really, really positively in a matter of, a few minutes because you're just under the gun, a lot of pressure on you equals success in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and there's people I think make a mistake like I did where I thought, okay, if I just wait until the last second, I'll do my term paper tonight because it's due tomorrow morning, and I would start it at night. And I wasn't. The problem with that is I was putting too much into a compressed period of time, and I wasn't being rational about what needed to take place. So what would have made more sense is to say, okay, this chunk of that big project is due literally in an hour. And make sure that it's something I can digest. And so if you're thinking about I need to do this, you want to cut it down into pieces and then narrow the time around those pieces, not just the whole thing, because you put yourself in the type of pressure that can kind of blow you apart if you put too much on your plate and require the finality within an hour. And it's like you're not going to write a book in an hour, but you could definitely write a chapter in an hour. So it's cutting things up appropriately.
Yeah. For those who may not know, tell us a little bit more about Total Control Financial and what inspired you to create it.
Well, Total Control Financial is a company that was founded because of really seeing what my parents went through. It's a personal thing for me, watching people, good, hardworking people, work their whole lives and retire and really not have resources or choices. And it was heartbreaking to watch that, and really there was a kind of a final coffee shop meeting with my dad a couple of months before he passed away, and we were talking, and he looked at me and he said, there were just so many things that I wanted to do. And I sat there and I looked at him and I felt the regret, and I went, that sucks. And I got to figure out how to help people not be in this space, because it was really a function of not having control of his money. He just did what he was supposed to do according to the system. Hand your money over to an advisor and then hope and pray. And like the idea of hope as your strategy, really you're just smoking a bunch of hopium and you're going to wake up being afraid. And so the company was founded with the idea that if people are empowered with a tool and then they're educated and we can kind of navigate with them and be a co-pilot along the way with their money, their retirement money, their financial mastery. If we build something and go with people on that journey and they're self-responsible, they can design a life versus having a life by default. And so the company is built so that people can choose the way that their life is going to be financially and the choices that they have, and they're not just stuck and hoping that it'll all work out.
Right. That seems to be the trend for the last 100 years of Americans. And it's very frustrating, which is really part of, why I created this, to help inform people of the other options out there that exist these days.
It's literally unlimited. I was having a conversation earlier today, and we were talking about how there's really no excuse to not do something different, because all the information in the world 20 years ago, we didn't have this option. You couldn't just get anything you wanted. You had to go to the library or you had to talk to the right people. Now we've got podcasts and the internet, and there's so much information. There's only one problem. We're drowning in information. And so we go, what do I do? I mean, I've got 40,000 different things trying to get my attention, all these different options. And really what we're looking for is the wisdom. And the wisdom comes from the experience. It's not just an academic theory. We need to find that where people before us have done things and we can model. There's a huge power in that, and not just listening to whoever has the most exciting bits of information, but really who has the wisdom that's gonna be true.
Now, speaking of inspiration, what inspired you to create your own martial art, Yokido?
The universe collided with the idea. I mean, it was sort of funny because I'd been studying martial arts for 10, 12 years, and I found myself in doing yoga, and it was really because I wanted to find some space where I could be silent and be still. And I noticed that it was giving me a lot more, it was building up my core and my ability to sit still, and I loved that. And then I realized, wait a second, this is a lot like Aikido. There's a lot of similarities, and there was this dance between Aikido and yoga. And then I realized after, and this happens when we're in the middle of something, we go deep into it, we study it. Eventually, we start to create something that's more our own. It's our own spirit. And I realized with the martial arts, I was beginning to create my own version of things. And I thought, well, shoot, these things are really the core of what this is, the style. And so let's call it what it is. It's yoga and Aikido. So we'll call it Yokido. And it's who I am. It's my unique piece of love that I'm sharing with the world, and empowerment that people can take into their lives and and really be more present and more powerful in every place in their life.
I really love that because I'm the biggest fan of creativity and people being creative, because that is the one power that is ours, no matter how much education we have or lack. That being creative, it's our own personal power, and I love that you did that. I really love that.
Thanks, man. You're right about that. And as things are becoming more automated with robotics and artificial intelligence, one of the things that's so valuable is our ability to create, and that's a very human thing that it's not going to just be taken away by some machine learning. And we've got to really tap into that and own that, because it's always going to give us power and ability to contribute.
You're in the financial space, which is closely related to my reasoning for creating this podcast. Can you talk briefly about the green and red arrows of wealth and poverty, and why you really hate the term retirement?
Antonio, this is one of the things that gets me fired up. It's the arrows came from a client that I was working with a couple years ago. We were talking about she came to me and said, "Hey, I want some help with my money, and I was told to talk to you." And I said, "Great, what do you want to talk about?" She said, "Well, I watch the news. My husband and I watch the news, and we see the financial time, or like the financial section of the news, where somebody will say, today the markets did this. The Dow was up 500 points or down 200 points or whatever. And we watch these green arrows saying the market did well, and we feel richer. And then we're also concerned that we're going to see a red arrow tomorrow, or maybe we see a red arrow right now and we feel poorer and we start to contract. And we hate this. It's like it's being on a roller coaster every day." And I said, "Okay, well, what do you want to do?" And she said, "We want to get off this thing." I said, "Great, let's figure out how to do that." So we worked together for about 6 months, and the markets crashed one day. And I called her and I said, "So how you doing? Did you see the markets?" And she said, "No, I didn't notice." And I said, "You didn't notice they went down 500 points, the stock market?" And she said, "No, we didn't notice. We don't even care." And I thought, that is awesome.
Yes.
And it goes into the retirement thing, because all of their money for retirement was in the market. So they were basically in this retirement roller coaster. And so now they moved away, and they were trying to figure out what to do in their retirement. So I said, "Okay, well, let's get off the roller coaster, and then let's reimagine retirement and kick that term right to the curb." And the reason that we want to do that is because retirement was really set up to retire, to get rid of things that were used up, whether it was machinery or whether it was a farm animal. People have been programmed or brainwashed into believing that at some point they're just not useful anymore, and so they stop working. They get a gold watch, and then they get to go play golf or something, and they kind of go into the sunset. Well, the worst part about that is the average man in the United States is dead 3 years after they retire. And it's because they stopped contributing. They stopped having a purpose. All that time and energy and commitment to something that they were doing to contribute really was a big part of why the universe was supporting their life. And when they stop doing that, then the universe says, "Well, you're just taking up space. You're consuming resources. Let's put those resources, that energy, into something else that's going to contribute." And why would we stop doing that anyway? Why would we stop contributing after 30, 40 years of doing something? That's when we've got wisdom.
Right.
And we're so valuable. And yet people check out, and then you just watch them. They just kind of fall apart. So I hate the idea of traditional retirement. I think it's stupid. What we should be talking about is financial freedom and having choices and being able to do that. And that's really what we should, that's how retirement should be looked at, not as a time when you stop contributing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of my listeners are women, and you have something called EQRP that empowers moms to give them peace of mind and security. Tell us about that.
Well, if we think about retirement, if we think about the idea of building up of wealth, and this is especially true with women, because I think a lot of times women have been pushed aside, and they're not, like in my family, that was how it was. There wasn't really a conversation where my mom felt empowered. She just kind of hoped my dad figured it out, and he didn't really know what he was doing. And so what the alternative is, women can take control, and men can do this too, and they really should do this, taking control of their retirement money, things like their IRAs, their 401ks, and shifting into something where they can make the choices, they can make the call, and they're in total control. The EQRP is basically taking your IRA money, your 401k, putting it into an account. So we build this vehicle for you, and you put the money into the account. You're in charge. You're managing it. You're not getting feed to death from Wall Street, and you get to go invest in things that make sense to you. So it's really about empowering you and helping you with confidence, so that you can go make choices and you're in charge and you're not worried about what the markets are doing or who gets elected president. It really doesn't matter because you have the ability and the control over your money and your assets. And the EQRP that's why I wrote the book on the EQRP, to really get people clear on this, because most people have never heard of it. It's just like this mysterious thing that came out of nowhere, and they say, well, why haven't I heard of it? I said, well, it's because Wall Street doesn't want you to know that you can actually be in control. It wants to keep your stuff in its control so it can fee you until you're dead. And we don't like that. So that's where we came up with the EQRP and built it and wrote the book to empower people and give them the confidence that they can be in charge of their money and be successful.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've really realized over the last few years is that Wall Street is not out to help you. They're out to make their money, and hopefully you'll be okay. Maybe,
It's definitely skewed. There's a quote by John Bogle, who most people have heard of Vanguard, the biggest S&P 500 index fund in the world. And the founder of this has a quote, and it's on totalcontrolfinancial.com. It's right there. It says, there's something wrong with the system when 80% of the profits go to the system, 20% goes to the investor, and the investor is taking on 100% of the risk. That's John Bogle saying that. Wall Street doesn't like that he said that, but it's true. And we need to really think about why we're in that system. If it's taking the lion's share of the profits and we're taking on all the risk, that's crazy.
Yeah, and that's huge. That's very, very huge. And that is why a lot of people are so fearful to even get in investing in the first place.
Well, and we have to rethink what it is to invest and whether we're actually investing or whether we're speculating. And there's a reason that it feels nerve-wracking. It's because it's when you go to the casino and you put your chips down on a roulette wheel or something, it's very nerve-wracking. There's no real difference with the stock market. You're putting your chips down and you're spinning this thing hoping it'll land, and that's all about speculation. It's like buying a house and holding it, hoping it's going to go up in value in a year or two, and then flipping it. You don't really have any control over what the market's going to do. The difference is when you become an investor and you start buying things that are built on, there's a foundation, there's a reason that you're actually buying them, and they're producing cash flow every month. Those type of things are a different play. That's you're not subject to the markets or the people that are manipulating things. There's no casino involved. It's really up to you, and you drive the value of that asset, and it keeps paying. So we have to really rethink what it means to invest and whether we're actually being speculators, which most people really are.
Yeah, which reminds me of something I heard from about real estate from Arnold Schwarzenegger of all people, where he said the first house he bought was a rental property that he lived in, and he's like, never, if you're going to buy a property, make sure it produces some type of cash flow. Don't just buy a home to live in. And that stuck with me. That's going to stick with me forever, which is so smart, but so many people do the absolute opposite.
Well, yeah, because we're brain damaged into thinking that a house is an asset, and a house is not an asset that you're sitting in. It's a liability.
Total liability.
Has been yelling about this for 20 years.
Yeah,
and it's because it eats you. If it feeds you, it's an asset. If it eats you, it is not. It's a liability. And I love what Grant Cardone talks about in terms of real estate. He said, you guys should stop thinking about buying a property to live in. You should be renting things so that you have flexibility. Go buy something that will pay for itself with renters. But stop thinking that you need to go buy something to live in and then anchoring yourself down when you really need to be flexible, because the economy we're in, we need the flexibility, and you should be building your asset base before you start building a lifestyle.
Yeah, you got to be nimble, like Grant says. I love listening to Grant. He's pretty awesome. What was your first entrepreneurial venture, and how old were you?
The first one that I remember, I mean, I don't think I had one in the womb, but the one I remember was when I was 11. I had a huge problem, and this is what entrepreneurs, this is our job. We're our job that we're tasked to go find problems and solve them, and it's not that hard. To walk down the street, you're going to run into a problem, something that bugs you. When I was 11, I had a problem. The problem was I wanted to play video games, and my parents said, we don't have the money, and we're not going to buy the games. And I went, that is not a good solution. I don't like that. I'm going to fix this. So I found games that were available in the newspaper. Back in the day when you actually had newspapers and you bought stuff in the newspaper, there was no Craigslist.
Right.
And so I just started, I would call people that had this big block of a problem. It's called, they had 25 Nintendo games and they wanted to get rid of them, but they were dealing with people coming to their house, buying one. And I would just say, hey, I'll buy all 20 of them or all 30 of them. And and I'll give you less per game and you'll be done. And so I ended up doing that, and then I would sell them off one at a time. In the meantime, I got to play all the games. So it's really, it was a good way to fulfill my need, my desire to play, but also I was solving problems for these other people with a real wholesale retail type of business. And it was something that I had a passion around. I mean, I don't anymore, but there's always something that we've got a passion around that we can turn into a business, because I mean, shoot, you can make $1 billion selling pencils. There's somebody that's done that. It's just it's a question of what problem are you solving, man,
and not to mention make sure it's something you actually enjoy doing.
That does help, especially when you're sleeping under your desk. I mean, if you're not enjoying it, it's going to get real old real fast.
Oh yeah. So life, as we know, is just an up and down roller coaster of who knows what, and we all go through this journey. What was the most unsuccessful time in your journey, and how did that make you feel, and when was it?
The thing that I've learned about success is that it's a terrible teacher. And so the moments where I've fallen on my face were these gems, these experiences that I was able to use as a foundation going forward. The one that hit me the hardest was in 2008 when I had spent about 10 years building up a real estate portfolio, a pretty big business all over the country, had $20 million in real estate. And when the market crashed, I crashed with it. And it wasn't so much that I lost all this money, it was that I lost my identity. And I had tied my self-worth and net worth so tightly together that when my net worth went to negative 5 million, I felt basically useless. And I went, this is a huge problem. And at the time I was thinking, shoot, maybe I should just check out. I mean, what do I need to be here for? I'm not worth anything. And it really got me to think about how I had created that. And in the beginning, I didn't really think about it in those terms. I was just pointing the finger. I was being a really good victim, blaming people and ignoring the truth. And eventually I learned that the question to ask is, what is true and how am I responsible for this? And when I did that, it started to spill over into everything in my life. And I realized that what was true is I was focused on money, period. More money, and it was never enough. So I wasn't thinking about how I was going to impact people in a positive way. I was just figuring out how I was going to get another $1 million in my bank account. And so I switched gears and started asking a different question. How am I going to impact? How am I going to touch and connect with another million people? The money will take care of itself if you're empowering, if you're solving problems for more and more people. That's just how it works. It's a side effect. And instead of it just being more money, it was really everything was being based on a set of values that I had to study, figure out who I was and what I was all about. That was different. 15, 20 years ago, I didn't know what my values were. And it was only because of this crash and burn that I was able to understand this stuff. If I had made money in 2008 and I hadn't crashed and burned, I would probably be the biggest a-hole you've ever met right now, because it would have made me bigger and bigger and more full of myself, and my ego would have still been running the show. And so I'm grateful for the impact, especially early. I mean, there's nothing like having these mistakes. It's a little bit more painful when you're 50, 60 and you make the mistake. In your 20s, it's a gift from God.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Total gratitude right there. Yeah.
Totally.
What do you feel is the hardest things for you to overcome in your business, and how have you conquered it?
The hardest thing that I have had to overcome is realizing that when things go wrong and people like in a real estate world, when things crashed, there were people that had invested, and when they lost money, the hardest thing for me to do was to acknowledge that stuff happens, that there's no perfect investment vehicle, and to really be able to have those conversations with people, because it's hard to say, hey, you know what, you might lose your money. This might go poorly. And what I learned there is that people appreciate candor, and the answer isn't necessarily no when people are going to do business with you or invest with you. What people want, though, is they want this refreshing thing called the truth. And so I learned that was more important than any type of pitch or potential. It was being honest about what's real. And now those conversations are embedded in everything that I'm doing or the culture of the company. It was being able to be authentic. And I feel like the more we do that, the more we separate ourselves, and there's no competition, because most people are too afraid of being real, and they tend to have too much spark or sizzle and shininess around everything, and there's no real downside. And it's not honest, but you can really differentiate when you go into the space of candor.
Yes. What was your most challenging client or client situation, and how'd you resolve that?
Well, a couple of years ago, I had a gal that had asked me to mentor her, and we'd been working together for about 5 or 6 months, and she had borrowed some money from somebody that was investing with her. I mean, it was really an investment, and she wanted my coaching and help on her investments, and so we were going through the process of her working on finding new real estate deals and things. And it became obvious to me, some guy had given her $250,000 to invest. She was using his money for her lifestyle. And one day I was watching as she was having new drapery put into her penthouse condo in Chicago. And I was thinking, you are literally a fraud. You're a con. And so she and I had this conversation where she said, I don't know that I need this anymore. And I said, that's perfect. I'm going to give you your money back, and I'm going to wish you well, because she wasn't being honest. She wasn't being real. The funniest part was she ended up on a reality television show it was one of these property flipping shows. And I just cracked up and I thought, great, she's perpetuating the lie, the myth. And it was valuable though for me to say, this is not somebody I'm willing to have in my life. And now if people aren't transparent, and she was being the opposite of transparent, if they're not transparent, they don't get to be in any type of relationship with me as a customer, a client, an investor. There's a filter now for that energy. And so I'm really careful. And it's because I figured out what my values are, and you don't get to violate those. And if you do, you don't get to be in my life.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, that's incredible. There's a lot of, for lack of a better word, shysters around us everywhere.
They're everywhere. It's unbelievable. You got to watch. And it's one of the greatest lessons that I learned through the meltdown and everything was that it's valuable to have bald and gray around you. Meaning you want to have people that have been through cycles, they've been through the roller coaster, and they have like X-ray vision into the future, and they can see where you're heading. Mm-hmm. And there's so many people that are pitching their stuff these days in the investment world or in business that haven't actually fallen down, and they haven't had to get up, and they haven't had to face the consequences of something that was really intense. And I see what they're doing, and I just look at it, and I can tell what's coming. And without somebody having gone through this process, they're not going to be able to see that. So it's important to have people around you that can give you the honest truth about you and about things that they're seeing that you'd never be able to see unless you'd been through things. So gray and bald, I think, are key.
Yes, I love that. What one thing in your business are you currently struggling to overcome?
There's noise. The noise, there's so much noise out there, so many opportunities, and saying no. And this is one of the differentiators. It's probably the biggest differentiator from the successful and the super successful. And that is the super successful say no to almost everything all the time. And it's hard because we see all these opportunities that seem really, really juicy and fun and exciting and have huge potential. And we have to say no to almost all of them constantly, and sometimes it feels bad. So it's a muscle that we have to build and strengthen. But there's very little that's more important than saying no to most things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most people, we feel like it's not a good thing to tell people no. But what did I hear? A lot of the most successful guys, they say no like 90% of the time when people ask them for things.
Easily. And people feel like they're going to be judged if I say no. What will they think of me, and how do I say no? And one of my friends that I was visiting with, we were having a group of us, I think we were in Asia, we're all talking about this problem. How do you say no? And she was great. She said, oh, when somebody invites us to do something, we smile and we say no thank you. And they said, that's it? And I said, yeah. It cracked us up. We go, it seems complicated. And she said, well, that's how it works. And they don't get upset. Sometimes they're a little confused because what we tend to do is not want to confront things. And this happens all the time. People can probably relate to this, where you invite somebody to do something and they go, yeah, let me see what I can do. Or they commit and then they flake out on you, or
yes, or
they aren't willing to just say no, thank you. I've observed myself doing this, and I go, what is your problem? Just tell them no, thank you. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not going to do that. Like, I get to choose my life. It's my life. And so why can't we do that? We forget about everybody else's opinion of you. Focus on what your opinion of you is. You're going to have to be with you the rest of your life. Let's get that one straight first.
Yes. Absolutely, man. What do you feel is your one biggest business triumph to date?
Biggest business triumph to date. it's owning what I believe is true and being willing to act alone. I've had to let some people go, partners and some staff, and it's not necessarily the funnest thing in the world to say no, especially when people are calling you crazy. I have a new appreciation for somebody like the president, whether it's Trump or anybody else, because they have to make decisions and they have this amount of information and people are going to criticize. It's easy to be a critic. And there's been plenty that I've decided and I've been criticized by people that are close. And oftentimes I'm sitting there listening and I say, thanks for the feedback. And I keep moving forward. The biggest triumph is to be able to continue to make those decisions and not hesitate because somebody's going to criticize. Guaranteed, the more you do, the more successful you are, you're going to get criticized like crazy. It's just part of the game. Either you can deal with it or you're never going to make any progress.
Right. What do you feel is your one biggest personal triumph to date?
Biggest personal triumph to date is that I think it's that I am very, very open to being candid with my friends and having conversations and sharing with them what I'm really thinking and I don't let people off the hook. And it's fascinating to me because sometimes it makes for really awkward conversations, and yet there's so little of it. Jack Welch said that the missing thing in business these days is candor, and having friends in our life that can tell us and see our blind spots and share those things, and being willing to share those with people and have them share those with you is a powerful relationship base. And so that's how I am consistently. I've created a little bit of a softness around it. It used to be a little harsh and people would it was like being punched in the face every time I opened my mouth. I think there's now a way to deliver that. And I feel really good about being able to share that with people and doing it consistently. People know where I stand and I think it often helps them, or at least gets them to think about things that they wouldn't have thought about before because everybody was just trying to make them feel good.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I really enjoy about the things you're saying is the fact that being real and a real human being and a real person to interact with is extremely important. And I really enjoy that with everyone I encounter, which is a rarity these days, but I really appreciate that.
Well, it's funny because what do we see about people? We see the highlight reels on Facebook. We see all the good stuff, all the cool photos and the experiences, and we're comparing ourselves to people's highlight reels. Well, that's a crazy way to live our lives, and it's not the authentic. It's not the pain points. We very rarely see those things. We certainly don't see all of them, and yet we're thinking this is who people are. And so I think that we really have to step away from that and engage people at a raw level, and that's where relationships are, and that's what we're meant to do. We're meant to be in relationship. We're not meant to have highlight reel versus highlight reel.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Hang tight, successors. We'll return to our conversation with Damion Lupo as well as quick success after a word from our sponsors. Are you a tense, tired, busy person who works day in and day out who tends to lack the proper sleep and energy? Using modular supplements, health-related articles, recipes, life hacks, and more, Bellison can help. With quality as high as Bellison, you're buying from a company that cares about the environment and only uses premium vegan supplements. That's Bellison.com. Want to learn how to cook healthy, exercise, and meditate in just 30 minutes a day? Bellison.com. Want to feel healthy, energetic, and focused like me? Bellison.com. To receive a 10% discount at checkout, visit Bellison.com with the coupon code THE4POS. Visit Bellison.com now. That's BELISAN.com. Compassion and quality without compromise. Bellison.com. And we're back with author and entrepreneur Damion Lupo. Now we get into the part of the show I like to call Quick Success, where you, Damion, can inspire the successors to enhance their lives in the areas of knowledge, health, wealth, and spirituality. Damion, what are you currently doing to enhance your knowledge?
I'm literally doing the same thing everybody is doing right now, listening to podcasts, and I do that. I mean, my earbuds are in my ears all the time, and it's not just Pandora. I mean, I'm inundating myself with thought leaders and change agents, the people that are thinking up new ways of doing things and living, and I'm doing that at 2 to 3 times speed, so I can get more of that into my brain. So that's a constant, never-ending process to be connected with people. I think a lot of times people think that it's hard to find the right people to be around, and how do I get out? How do I reach out to certain people that I want to have in my life? Well, shoot, they're on podcasts, and they're basically waiting for you to listen to them right now. So that is the way that I continue to expand and grow, is to continue to be influenced by the right people.
Oh yeah, podcasts and audiobooks, two of my favorite things in the world.
Yep. And absolutely swimming and stuff. I mean, one of the guys that I really enjoy, and I don't just read his books, but I swim in his stuff, is Grant Cardone. And there's a difference between reading somebody's book and studying it and listening to it over and over again. I mean, I've listened to the 10X rule probably 10 times, and you start to embody things. So whatever resonates with you, it's not enough to just read it. You really have to become it, and then something shifts.
What are you currently doing to enhance your health?
This is all about yoga. This is all about my martial arts. This is about that constant practice, about showing up. And there isn't a single case where I ever go and I don't feel better than when I started. And that continuing practice, the little breakthroughs, keeps me excited about doing it. But it feeds everything else in my life, and that's the leverage point. It's with health, finding that one thing that will feed, and you can build from using that on everything else is better from it. And so it's literally a daily thing for me now.
What are you currently doing to enhance your wealth?
I'm building a company and empowering millions of people with their financial lives, giving them control. There's no doubt that the side effect is an amount of wealth and money that is not spendable. It's not even countable. And so I spend all my time and energy focused on freeing people from the roller coaster and the bondage that they're currently in with their money.
What are you currently doing to enhance your spirituality?
This probably goes back into the yoga and the work I do sharing these messages. There's a spiritual piece of sharing raw, that you're putting yourself out there. And so when I'm sharing these messages and when I'm practicing on the mat, those two things continue to expand me. And I think anybody that's allowing themselves to be vulnerable and putting themselves out there will continue to feel their spiritual side grow at the same time.
Now, when it comes to success, what do you feel is one of the best pieces of advice you've ever received?
Fail often, fail fast, and learn. And that's the key. Again, success is the worst possible teacher, and it makes I think Bill Gates said this. It makes smart people feel like they actually had something to do or everything to do with what's going on, and it makes them feel invincible. I mean, I know that I felt 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And it was because I hadn't been smacked around and I hadn't learned from the mistakes. Find ways to make mistakes. I mean, that's the key. And when you realize that you're not going to be eaten alive by a saber-toothed tiger when you make a mistake, you realize, okay, this is just money. There's a gem of wisdom. There's a growth opportunity here, and we can really start to expand ourselves if we're willing to go into that space. And the fear keeps us paralyzed. We've got to make sure that we're growing and making as many mistakes as possible.
Are there any modern apps or technologies that help you achieve success?
The two things that I use consistently, I use something called Smartsheet and I use Slack. And I use these because it's a very clear way to connect with people and it keeps things organized. We've got this information overload. It's like a tornado of data in our lives. And I keep things really, really simple and very, very clean. And so I typically am deleting more apps on my phone than I'm adding. And it's because I think it's easy for us to feel like we have more abundance or wealth or whatever if we have more data. And it's the modern pack rat. And it doesn't help us because all of this stuff has energy. Just like if you had massive amounts of garbage in your house, it all has energy and it's suffocating. Same thing with data. We want to keep it clean and we want to get rid of the stuff that's not serving us.
Those are powerful words. The modern pack rat.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
Pack rat.
Right. What new thing, book, activity, technology, or skill are you really excited to learn and dive into?
There's so many things that are changing so quickly. Using the social media, and this is probably going to make me look really old, but using social media to connect with people and really being in conversation with them, there's so much power and leverage in us using these tools, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Snapchat. I mean, there's so many. for me, it's a growth opportunity because I don't have a lot of skills there. I'm kind of like a toddler. I'm sort of bumping around learning this stuff. And then there's a way to connect with more people and influence and empower more people by using these things. So I'm diving into those in a massive way now to really share more of me. And I think the cool thing is everybody can do the same thing because it's all out there. And basically all these tools are all free.
As far as helping our listeners achieve success in whatever it is that they're doing, what piece of advice can you give them?
Biggest thing that you have to ask yourself, you really have to start asking the questions. For success, the first question is asking yourself what is true. And that's personal. It's for you. What is true about what your vision is and what your values are? Who are you and where you want to go? If you start with that, you have a great chance of starting to migrate in that direction. If you're not willing to ask what's true, like what are your behaviors, what are your habits, what's going on right now, who do you have in your life that should not be in your life, who do you need to eviscerate? If you're not willing to be real about that, you can basically just say, my life is screwed. You've got to be willing to be honest and asking that question. It starts with knowing the truth. And if you don't have the ability, if you can't get yourself to come up with it, get some help. Have somebody that will hold you accountable, that will hold the space, and so you can figure out what the truth is. If you don't start with that, you're on quicksand.
Oh yeah, those are powerful words. Damion, you're knocking it out of the park, man. I like that.
Thanks, man.
In Successors, Damion has a special offer. Let's see, Damion, what is that?
What I'd like to do is make sure that people have the tool and they have the information so that they have the real uncut, unvarnished, raw info on being able to take control of their money. I wrote a book a few years ago called The Total Control Guide to the QRP. And if people will go to totalcontrolfinancial.com, there's a box that they can click for a copy of that book. And I'd love to send it out to people. It'll give you some options. It'll give you some information that you probably have never heard of so that you can start making decisions that are in your best interest and stop being taken advantage of by the system with your retirement money, with your financial decisions. And really, it'll sift out, it'll take away a lot of the noise. And that's what we want to do is get you clear on your options so that you can make a decision that's good for you and you can take control of all your money.
All right, Successors, you heard that. Get his free book at totalcontrolfinancial.com. How can our listeners connect with you?
Best way to find me is to go to DamionLupo.com. You can, whatever social media you're on, you'll be able to find me there, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, and reach out to me. Put your hand up, send me a message, say hi, and I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, and finally, what is your definition of success?
Success for me is the freedom to choose what I'm going to do and who I'm going to spend time with, and it's having the health so that I can do that. Beyond that, everything else is it's really just stuff. It's just noise. But having the choice and the freedom, my most important value is freedom, and so success to me is true freedom in how I'm going to live and who I'm going to do it with.
All right, Successors, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Damion Lupo. I really enjoyed it, Damion. Awesome, very awesome conversation. Please check out more successful free content like this at the4pos.com, as well as rate and review wherever you find your podcasts. Thanks for listening and prepare for success. Thanks, Damion.
Thanks, Antonio.
If you want to be more driven and more motivated in your life or business, go to the4pos.com/free book and grab a copy of my book, Indulge Your Affirmative Motivation Within. 25 motivations of personal development and life success. Get it now at the4pos.com/free book. Again, that's the4pos.com/free book.